Imagine there's a radio playing in your head all day. It's not music, it's just a constant low-grade broadcast about food. What you ate, what you're going to eat, whether there's something in the fridge right now. It's not actual hunger, it's just noise that never quite turns off. Most people assume this is normal. Then someone starts semaglutide, and 3 days later they describe the same thing. The noise stopped. Not gradually, suddenly, not medical advice. Semaglutide is a prescription medication. Everything here is educational only. Consult a licensed physician before considering any of this. That phenomenon is what researchers call food noise. Let's be precise about what's on the market and what exists in a different category entirely. The FDA-approved versions are Ozempic, which is an injectable approved for type 2 diabetes, Wegovy, which is an injectable approved specifically for obesity and weight management at higher doses, and Rybelsus, which is an oral tablet approved for type 2 diabetes. These are legitimate prescription medications manufactured under strict pharmaceutical standards, dosed accurately, and legally available through a licensed prescriber. Then there's a second category. Peptide research vendors sell semaglutide, sometimes labeled GLP-1s or research-grade semaglutide, as a research compound, technically for laboratory use only, not for human consumption. This is the gray market reality. It exists. People in biohacking communities use it. The legal status varies by country and is murky in many jurisdictions. The safety concern here is real. Purity, sterility, and accurate dosing are not guaranteed when you're buying from a non-pharmaceutical source. Contaminated or misdosed peptides carry risks that pharmaceutical products don't. I'm not here to tell you what to do with that information. I'm here to make sure you have it. For the rest of this video, the mechanisms and effects apply to the molecule itself, regardless of source, but the risk profile changes significantly depending on where it comes from. Semaglutide binds GLP-1 receptors in at least 4 key locations in the body, and each one does something different. In the pancreas, it stimulates insulin release in a glucose-dependent manner. That means insulin goes up when blood sugar is high, but not when it's normal, which reduces hypoglycemia risk compared to older diabetes drugs. In the stomach, it slows gastric emptying. Food moves more slowly from the stomach to the small intestine. This flattens post-meal blood sugar spikes and also contributes to that prolonged feeling of fullness. In the brain, specifically in the hypothalamus and brainstem, GLP-1 receptor activation reduces appetite signaling. This is where food noise gets quieted. The constant drive to seek food, the hedonic pull of eating beyond satiety, gets turned down. For people who've spent decades fighting that signal, this is the effect that changes their relationship with food entirely. And then there's emerging evidence of effects in the heart, kidneys, and potentially the nervous system, which we'll get to in the research section. The clinical trial record on semaglutide is one of the strongest in modern metabolic medicine. The STEP trials, semaglutide treatment effect in people with obesity, tested Wegovy at 2.4 milligrams weekly against placebo. Average weight loss across the trials came in at 15 to 20% of total body weight over 68 weeks. To give that context, prior to GLP-1 agonists, no non-surgical intervention had consistently produced results in that range. The drug changed the benchmark. The SUSTAIN trials established glycemic control benefits for type 2 diabetes, with meaningful reductions in HbA1c. The SELECT trial was a landmark cardiovascular outcomes study. Over 17,000 participants, high cardiovascular risk, no diabetes requirement, just overweight or obesity. Semaglutide reduced major cardiovascular events, including heart attack and stroke, by 20% compared to placebo. That result got the attention of cardiologists who hadn't previously thought of this as a heart drug. The FLOW trial looked at kidney protection in people with type 2 diabetes and chronic kidney disease. Results showed semaglutide significantly slowed the progression of kidney disease. The trial was actually stopped early because the benefit was so clear. Beyond metabolic outcomes, there's emerging research, mostly early stage, suggesting potential neuroprotective effects relevant to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and a genuinely surprising finding. Semaglutide appears to reduce cravings not just for food, but for alcohol and potentially other addictive substances. The hypothesis is that GLP-1 receptors in the brain's reward circuitry are involved in compulsive consumption behaviors broadly, not just eating. This is an active area of research and not a proven clinical application yet, but it's one of the more intriguing directions in the literature. The primary populations are people with type 2 diabetes, people with obesity or significant overweight, and people with metabolic syndrome looking to improve insulin sensitivity and body composition. In the biohacking and performance community, a smaller subset uses it specifically for body composition, either at standard doses for meaningful fat loss or at microdoses for more modest appetite modulation without committing to the full weight loss protocol. Microdosing, typically 0.1 to 0.25 milligrams per week, is an emerging practice. The idea is to get partial food noise suppression and appetite control without the more aggressive weight loss and side effect profile that comes with higher doses. It hasn't been studied specifically in this context, so it's largely user-reported territory, but it's a real pattern in these communities. Here's where I want to be straightforward with you, because some of the enthusiasm around semaglutide glosses over a legitimate concern. Rapid weight loss, regardless of the tool, tends to include lean mass loss alongside fat loss. Semaglutide is no exception. When people lose 15 to 20% of their body weight relatively quickly, a meaningful portion of that can be muscle. The visible version of this is what people call Ozempic face or Ozempic body, the gaunt, aged appearance that can come from losing subcutaneous fat and muscle mass rapidly, particularly in the face and upper body. This is not a minor cosmetic complaint. Muscle loss has downstream consequences for metabolic rate, long-term weight maintenance, functional strength, and healthy aging. The mitigation strategy is well established. Prioritize protein intake, aim for 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight daily, and maintain consistent resistance training throughout the weight loss period. Do not use semaglutide as a passive weight loss tool. You need to be actively working to preserve muscle. Some in the biohacking community stack semaglutide with MK677, an oral growth hormone secretagogue, specifically to counteract lean mass loss. This is an aggressive approach with its own risk profile, and I'm not recommending it, just noting it exists. The more clinically relevant upcoming combination is Cagri-Sema, semaglutide paired with cagrilintide, an amylin analog. Early trial data suggests this combination may produce even greater weight loss than semaglutide alone, with potentially better lean mass preservation. This is one to watch. Standard escalation for weight loss with semaglutide goes like this: 0.25 milligrams once weekly for 4 weeks, then 0.5 milligrams, then 1 milligram, then 1.7 milligrams. The target maintenance dose for weight loss is 2.4 milligrams per week. That's the Wegovy protocol. The escalation schedule exists to minimize gastrointestinal side effects as your body adjusts. Microdose range: 0.1 to 0.25 milligrams weekly. Again, not a studied protocol, but what's used in practice for partial appetite modulation. Nausea is the most common side effect, and it's dose-dependent. Most pronounced when starting or increasing dose. For many people, it diminishes significantly after a few weeks. Vomiting is less common but does occur. Constipation is a frequent complaint. Slowed gastric emptying affects the entire digestive tract. More serious but rare, pancreatitis has been reported. There are also theoretical concerns about gallbladder issues with rapid weight loss, and the muscle loss issue we already covered. This section matters. Do not use semaglutide if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid carcinoma. Do not use it if you have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome, type 2, MEN2. These are hard contraindications based on animal study signals and the drug's labeling. History of pancreatitis is a contraindication. Pregnancy, semaglutide should not be used during pregnancy. Type 1 diabetes requires careful medical supervision given the distinct insulin dynamics involved. Anyone with pre-existing GI conditions should have a detailed conversation with their doctor before considering this. This is not a list to skim past. One more thing worth flagging, tirzepatide. Where semaglutide is a GLP-1 receptor agonist, tirzepatide is a dual agonist. It hits both GLP-1 and GIP receptors. Early trial data suggests modestly greater weight loss and potentially a better side effect profile for some users. It's the next evolution in this drug class. I'm covering tirzepatide in the next video. If you're researching this space, you'll want to see that one too. I need to close this one more carefully than most topics, because semaglutide is not a research peptide like BPC 157 or a nootropic with a wide safety window. It is a potent pharmaceutical drug that affects insulin regulation, gastric function, and neurological appetite signaling in ways that have real consequences for real physiology. The FDA-approved versions, Ozempic, Wegovy, Rybelsus, exist within a prescribing framework for a reason. That framework includes baseline labs, contraindication screening, monitoring, and dose management with a clinician who knows your history. If you're drawn to this molecule for legitimate reasons, that is the appropriate path. The research compound route carries real additional risk: unknown purity, inaccurate dosing, no clinical oversight. I've described it here because it exists and people encounter it. That is not an endorsement of it. Nothing in this video constitutes medical advice. I'm Marcus Reed. I share information, not prescriptions. Do not make changes to any medication or start any new compound without proper medical guidance. If this was useful, subscribe. The tirzepatide video is next. Drop your questions below. I read them. End of script. Video 04.